My name is AJ, and I'll be showing you today how to do a moving hold. Now, you might ask, what is a moving hold? Is that a contradiction in terms? Because how can something be moving if it's holding, or vice versa? The reason that we actually incorporate a moving hold, and what you'll see as I scrub through here, is this pose is essentially dead because it's static, and you can see in 2D how when you watch movies, they'll be able to get away with holding a pose for several frames, and it's not a big deal. But in CG, if you see a character kind of move and then stop, something rings false to us. So what we incorporate into our animations as CG character animators is what's known as a moving hold, where you essentially, I guess in terms of its most simplistic sense, give it a drift, a way to kind of hold a pose and not jump into it and jump right out of it right away. If I were to highlight all of my curves here, turn on the curves, you'll notice that I have a few extra keys in here. Basically, this is where all the animation is happening. 6, 9, and 14. Here's a key pose here, this is a breakdown, and this is the last key. I've already put in some guidelines for 1 and 6 and 14 and 24 here. These are the exact same key, but I want it to actually drift from 14 to 24. Now, the way in which I can do this is actually quite simple. I can take frame 13 and 14. You'll notice there's a slight difference between those two. And what I'm going to do is take frame 13 and middle mouse over 14 and press the S key. And what that's going to do is essentially I took this frame's data and moved it to 14, so now between these two you'll see it has sort of a slight drift. Now you'll notice that the character is going to have sort of an awkward look to him right now, and the reason that is because if we go into the graph editor, you'll be able to see all these curves, and all of them, we'll just go ahead and look at this translate Z, I believe it is. We can check this curve out, and you'll notice that we have this kind of overshoot going on. Now, if you prefer plateau, you can also use that, but you'll notice that you'll have sort of a similar problem where it'll flatten and then move back up. So either way, you're going to have an issue here, and you'd have to technically go through and manipulate these curves and make sure that your out tangents are flat and remove all overshoot. Overshoot is what's going to give you sort of an awkward drift. And you could hypothetically go through each one of these, which would take quite a while. But luckily, there is a script known as the auto tangent script. And I'm just going to use that real quick. And what that's going to do is remove overshoot. I'm going to go ahead and throw this back in clamp so you can see it work. It has this nice, or not nice in this case actually, overshoot going on. And all I have to do is drop this auto tangent, and it'll kind of clamp it to a point where it sort of eases toward this last key. And I can actually go back and just flatten that, and it'll sort of take care of that for me. So as you can see, these are now gradually going into that last key, which will give us the drift we're looking for. So now if I go back and hit play, we now have a slight drift here at the end. I can kind of scrub through so you can see it a little easier. Now, what if this is too much? What if this is too much of a drift here? I can actually grab all my curves, and let's say I just take 50% around frame 19 and replace 14 with 19. So now this is the greatest point, this is the least point, this is the greatest point. I'm going to take 50% of that and replace 14 again, essentially cutting that distance in half. I'm going to go back to the graph editor, grab the auto tangent again, and just grab that frame and all those keys, and just kind of run the auto tangent script, and that'll remove the overshoot for that as well. And now we sort of get there, and there's just a subtle move. And now you can also do that in anticipation for this movement by simply taking 7 and replacing 6 with 7. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the entire character with the shelf button I made. Go ahead and replace 6 with 7. So left click on 7, middle mouse drag to 6, press the S key, and now you'll have a sort of drift and then into this movement. But it might have some overshoot problems. 9 times out of 10 it will. Make sure that's a flat tangent. Take this guy and just use your auto tangent. I'll take care of that for you. Now, keep in mind the auto tangent script is not a cure-all. A lot of times you will have to go in and still tweak curves to get a more gradual or maybe a sharper in to your tangent. But you can obviously play with that. That's more for curve tweaking. Auto tangent is essentially a script that's useful to get your curves in a place where you can just simply manipulate them, as opposed to having to go into every single one and take care of all overshoots. So now, if we check our animation, we have a nice little drift into our key pose, breakdown, and ending pose, and then a subtle drift here. Now, obviously, this is more of a rough animation. You could easily add in from here to here some breakdowns where you have eye darts and things like that that really bring your character to life. So, hopefully that was clear. Thank you for listening.